Welcome to a special edition of a Show Up interview. I have Jennifer Jewett here. She's local to my community in Plattsburgh, New York. Unfortunately, a lot of today's discussion is going to maybe be upsetting to some viewers. There will be conversations about animal abuse and the activism that is occurring within our community to try to prevent tethering of animals, specifically dogs, in our county, Clinton County. There are 33 states, Jennifer, that currently have tethering laws. We have surrounding counties that have tethering laws. And Jennifer's going to tell her story. We're going to try to stick to facts, objective information. It's very easy to get emotional about a lot of the conversation that we're about to have, especially since Jennifer's been working passionately with this for a year, over a year now. And so Show Up is here to do the right thing, to get people involved in doing the right thing, and to help the community members that have been trying to do the right thing for not just people, but anything, animals. And this is about dogs. So we have a lot going on in politics, and some of you might think, well, how is this the most important thing? It might not be the most important thing, but if we ignore anything that is the right thing to do, then there's suffering. And so it's important that we stand together and we show up together. And it's important that you guys give this interview a full watch so you get the facts, and that maybe it inspires some of you who don't even live around here to look into your own laws and to see if this is something that would inspire you to do the same thing. So let's get right into it. Jen, thanks for being here.
Thanks, JJ.
I have a copy of the law, but before we get into this, because some of our legislators, we feel, haven't even read it thoroughly or understand it, but before we get into this, everyone has a story. Everyone has a story in what started the spark or the flame to get passionate about something, and I want to hear about yours, and I want you to share to the people watching.
First of all, my name is Jennifer Jewett, and I am a retired Air Force member who's traveled all over this country. I have 2 golden retrievers at home, and in the past, I've had other golden retrievers that they've all been family to me. So everywhere I went, they went with me. So I really take care of my dogs, and like most people, most people do take care of their dogs, but every now and then you see something that just doesn't sit right with you. And back in October of 2023, I was working in Moores, traveling about 20 minutes from my house each day, and I noticed a German Shepherd that was about 1.5 years old puppy that was tied outside and in fact standing on its doghouse most of the time, or sitting in standing mud. And every day I'd go by there for 2 months straight, and this dog was always tied out. As I saw the weather in New York turn from, moderate to severely cold, there was hail, there was freezing rain, the snow began to fall, I started getting more and more upset. And I started calling the animal control officer, and I find out that at least 30 people had called in complaints on this dog. It was very upsetting to a lot of people. And even more so, this didn't sit right with me. Why should the public be subject to seeing this? And it was right along the side of the road. So I called the town supervisor in the town of Moores, and I said, can something be done? And in fact, made a lot of calls throughout the state to SPCA lead investigators just to find out what can be done to help this dog. Because animal control was saying as long as a dog in the state of New York has food, shelter, and water, after that, they can be left outside indefinitely, which is not right. As a dog owner, I don't believe in that. So I found out, in fact, that if a dog is not licensed in the state of New York, meaning it doesn't have its rabies vaccination, not licensed with the town, that a dog can be removed from the property. So I call up the Morristown supervisor, and I mention this to him because I'm looking for an out to save this dog, any way possible. And the Morristown supervisor, Jeff Menard, says to me, I don't care, it's just a dog. And he was horrible to me on the phone, and he hung up on me. And so then I called Calvin Castine, which was our local legislator for Moores and Champlain. And he again repeats that as long as the dog has food, shelter, and water, nothing can be done. And I said, well, unless we change the law. And he says, well, I said, well, how do you start on that? And he says, first you need to find a precedent. And I'm certain at the time that he believed I would never find a precedent. And I found precedents all over the country. And close by, most importantly, Essex County, which is just one county below us. They, in fact, have, at this point, had their law in place for 8 years now. So being that they're not that different than we are, they're only one county away, I'm thinking we too can get a law pretty easily.
You would think.
You would think so. So then I start, I say to Calvin, what can I do to get this going? He says, you need to get some buy-in from the towns. At this point, I'm thinking, Calvin Caston's helping me out. We're going somewhere. This is great. So I start going to town meetings. I went to about 6 town meetings in my local area. And then I go to the Clinton County Legislature meeting, which was February 20th, I believe it was February 28th, and that was of 2024. And when I get there, I'm well received. It was actually the same week as the Hillary Davis large-scale animal cruelty case that we had here in Clinton County.
Yep.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but in Essex County, they created their law because of a large-scale horse animal cruelty case.
Yes.
So I thought this was the push we would need to get us over the hump, like bring awareness. Now we've got an uproar, people are upset. Let's put animal cruelty laws in place, and let's start with a tether law.
Right.
So I go to the legislature. I am well received. I'm told to attend the public safety meeting, which would be in just a few weeks. And I go, and this is where the fun begins. I get there, very first meeting, I'm going to say Mark Henry is pounding his fist on the table right in my face, yelling at me to get rid of me. It was from the very get-go, from the very minute I got there, and he didn't even know me from anybody. I'm just somebody who's, quite frankly, in the Air Force, we have professionalism. We expect a certain amount of professionalism.
Right.
And that very first meeting, it was like they were trying to get rid of us. So I go to that first public safety meeting, and we start developing kind of a team, people who are coming forward, like the neighbor who lived next door in Moores to those dogs that was telling me that there would be days on end where there wouldn't be any footprints in the snow. And it just kept getting me even more fired up. And we would have major snowstorms where, I'm not going to lie, there were 2 nights where I actually cried because it was really, really bad weather, and all I could think about was the dog outside.
And for those for those who aren't familiar with our weather, go ahead and Google winters in Clinton County, New York. We are 40 minutes from Canada. It gets cold, and I want to bring us to the point of the story or the part of the story where, so you saw the German Shepherd on the igloo.
Right.
But what did you not see that you found out?
So I had been battling it out with the town supervisor and all these people, and I got fed up because I was getting nowhere. So I finally just pulled in the yard where this dog lives and put on a nice face, because everybody knows that if you're nice to someone, you'll get further. And the guy pulls in the yard, the owner and his wife. And I said to them, because I'm not afraid, can I buy your dog? I was desperate at this point. I just wanted to help that dog so desperately. And they tell me, oh no, that dog has it great. It has it great. Oh, and our other dog has it even better, loves it. And I'm like, what other dog? And they point right out to this field, the center of a field, about 30 yards out in the center of this field. There's a dilapidated doghouse, and there is a husky, an 11-year-old husky. Come to find out, this dog had spent its entire life on a chain in the middle of a field, and that was its entire life. And it's literally only about 20 feet from the road. So you imagine plows are going through and traffic's going, this dog has no life. And in the wintertime, like I said, people would say there's no footprints in the snow for days on end. The dog was so depressed, it wouldn't even come out of its doghouse. And being that my dog right now is 11 years old, my golden retriever, I cannot imagine a dog spending 11 years on a chain in the middle of a field. It's solitary confinement.
Yeah.
It's serving life. It's not living life. It's on a chain.
Yeah.
But the only thing that was keeping those dogs alive, come to find out, were good Samaritans who were purchasing hay, who were actually took the dogs off chains and got them like a tether run.
Wow.
Who supplied him with food, who was literally doing everything to keep these dogs alive, you know?
That's crazy.
Yeah, but it's actually makes it worse.
You found that out going to these meetings, and then people
Yes,
that were
people
neighbors and surrounding, residents were the ones that were like, hey, we've been helping them.
Yes.
Yeah, so as you're talking, I think that this is why this is important that you guys continue to listen, because yes, this is not national politics, right? And Show Up is heavily involved in politics. But what we're about to get into next is how I'm convincing everyone to get involved in local politics. Show up to your local meetings. Do the right thing. Support those who are doing the right thing. How people treat their animals is typically how they treat human beings. It's a window into how somebody perceives what love looks like and what caring for something looks like, especially something that is weaker, doesn't have a voice, and can't speak up. And so that is what we show up for. But in the process of Jennifer actually showing up, yes, you found, it sounds like, a lot of allies, and you did have allies. But I think there's also been a huge eye-opening experience through this of what feels like the system working against you, what feels like manipulation, and what ultimately feels like those that are elected in positions that we feel like are going to do the right thing when faced with a very basic law that suggests that we do the right thing, that are sometimes being naive and thinking that this is what everyone should do. We get slapped in the face with reality of, oh my goodness, not everyone in these positions are actually here for the reasons I thought they were here. And so I do want to touch base a little bit on the next part of your journey, which was attending all of these meetings. And you already kind of discussed how you were treated the first time, but it didn't really get much better from there. So let's continue what happened next after, the husky died, correct?
Well, so we attend the legislature meeting in April, all right? And Wendell Hughes, who is a huge supporter of this law, who has done a ton of work, invited the Lewistown supervisor to come up from Essex County to tell us how their law works and exactly, the drawbacks, the strengths to it.
That's good.
And he had a lot of great things to say about the law, and in fact said they don't have any problem with long-term tethering. And I made a lot of calls on my own. I called about 10 different animal control officers, and they all said, what do you mean 24/7 tethering? We don't have that issue in Essex County. Their program is designed for educational purposes. They're not out there giving a ton of fines.
Right.
They're just educating people on the spot and telling them, this is the law, and you can't do this anymore.
Right.
And, they move on their way. But if they were to continue to do it, then there would be consequences. But they don't have a problem.
Right.
So the Lewistown supervisor came to that April meeting and gave us a lot of good information. And some of the legislators were basically disputing him, everything he had to say, just argumentative, just trying to make him look like he didn't know what he was talking about. At the end of that meeting, that's when Calvin Castine, the public safety chair, says that he wants them to go, each legislator in Clayton County, to go out and do a survey of their towns and ask them, would they prefer option one, which is to keep the current ag and market law as is, and that would mean a dog could continue to be chained up 24/7 and no law needed. Would they like option two, which would be that a town each town could write their own individual law, or would they like option three? And option three would be one countywide law for all to follow. So we leave the April meeting expecting results in May. In that time frame, 25 of us went to the Morristown meeting, and we confronted Jeff Menard because of these dogs. And there were a lot of people who were in an uproar and supported this law. And we got absolutely nowhere except for the fact that that German Shepherd, that puppy, and that husky were pranced around out front so we could all see that they were perfectly fine. But at the same time, they didn't have any rabies vaccinations, any veterinary care. They were not licensed. They had none of the basic needs that a dog would need. So they were cited, in fact, for their dog houses being too small. They were sitting in standing mud. And, there was a lot wrong to this.
Just showing that they're great. You've paraded them around. They're
paraded
alive.
them around.
Great, okay, but...
You paraded them around.
Where are you bringing them back to?
Yeah. So we'll come back to what happens to that dog. If you just hold with us, we'll come back what happens to that dog, because it doesn't turn out good for that dog that was pranced around. Everybody said it was all right,
Right.
So we return in May to the public safety meeting with the results of the town survey. And we are told none of the towns want it. End of story, none of the towns want it.
Quote, end quote. None of the
towns want it. And Calvin Castine looks at Rob Timmons. Nope, Peru doesn't want it. Looks at Francis Perrier. He says, my towns don't want it. Well, this is just a small margin of the people that are legislators in Clinton County.
Right.
What about all the other towns, that they were not mentioning? So my team and I were very, very upset. And we're like, we want to see the proof. Mm-hmm. Show us the proof. And Calvin Castine says, I don't have to show you the proof.
Okay.
I don't have to show you the proof. So we're doing a lot in the community for the course of a few months. I'm not even going to go into everything, but we were in parades. My team and I were out there just expanding awareness of the subject, because it's important that people know we're trying to fight for a tether law, and showing people kind of what we wanted and why we want the law, because you have to create awareness in order to get something approved,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In that time, I decide, after hearing over and over and over that the towns don't want the law, I decide to do my own research and come across the true facts of really where the towns stand as far as town supervisors voting on behalf of their constituents.
Right. And you brought that today.
Yes.
And I saw it right before we started filming. It is incredible how much of a lie that was when you were told no towns want it. And in fact, how many?
Well, we had 6 towns that said that they did not want it. And I will say, for people at home, these are the towns that have the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Of course you wouldn't want it if
Right.
you are the problem.
Right.
It's like asking a bunch of alcoholics if they would like a DUI law. Of course they wouldn't like a
Right.
DUI
Right.
law, So the towns that were against it were Altona, Clinton, Ellenburg, Moores, Peru, and Saranac. Mm-hmm. Against it. The towns that wanted at the town level were Beekman Town and Chazy. Only 2 towns. And then the towns that did want it, because it only makes complete sense to have one law for the entire county to follow, which would create consistency. It's enforceable by law enforcement. Would be Sable, Blackbrook, Champlain, City of Plattsburgh, Dannemora, Town of Dannemora and Village of Dannemora, Town of Plattsburgh, Schuyler Falls, Village of Champlain, Village of Rouse's Point. So that is a considerable amount of towns that did want it, because it's only common sense.
Yeah, and the number of residents, just because we live in a geographical area that's quite rural. Mm-hmm. The numbers with all the towns that wanted it, what is the population?
51,120 people versus who didn't want it, 14,000, which is a drastic difference.
Yep.
To hear that the towns don't want it and the majority don't want it is a complete overstep. It's not right.
So it's either it's a lie regardless, but it's either a purposeful lie, meaning you knew that wasn't true and you said it, or it's a I don't care and I'm just going to tell you this lie, which is kind of hard to tell hearing the rest of your story what that could be, because you can continue on with your timeline here, but...
Well, you're talking about us attending parades and meeting after meeting.
Right.
There's at least 3 legislature meetings per month.
Right.
You have a public safety meeting and 2 regular sessions. And we were standing on our heads, quite literally, to get people to these legislature meetings. We had a time where we had about 25 people show up, and they were holding posters of dogs that died in various ways, upsetting. They can be hung, freeze to death, They can die of overheating. There's a lot of ways that a dog can die.
Right.
And we were on the front of the Press Republican quite a few times with, they keep an update on everything going on. So we're doing all this, and it's a lot of work, and we're creating awareness. And every time we go into a meeting, we're just shut down, not really given the time of day. And that's what upsets us the most. If I go to somebody and we're trying to get this done, we would go to a legislature meeting, a regular session, and get 1 minute to speak. We go to a public safety meeting, we might get 5 minutes to speak. We're the tail end, and we're just basically shoved out the door every time. We're given the scraps and never really allowed to have a conversation, really. In the beginning, I didn't even know I could call a legislator on the phone and have a conversation. But how are you ever going to get anywhere in a world where you're not allowed to have a meeting and talk to your legislators and survey them and say, what do you like in this law? What don't you like in this law? What do you have a problem with? There's no real communication.
There was no discussion. And that is part of the problem. So when looking at this law that they were all given, and this law was, Jennifer, you told me you had taken, of the 33 states that have tethering laws and even the Essex County one, you had looked at all of them and compiled this and even used the help of a law student, correct?
Well, I actually gathered the supervised tethering portion from a law that's currently in place down south, a woman who is kind of a mentor to me who's actually helped me along the way. You reach out to people with experience while you're doing this, but it's important to keep in mind that if somebody's going to write a law, they need to research other laws.
Yes.
And so I'm looking at Ulster County's law in, the state of New York. I'm looking at, there's 6, 7 county laws in the state of New York. I'm just comparing them, trying to tailor a law that will serve our needs here in Clinton County. So that brings me to about September timeframe. We go into a public safety meeting, and I don't know if anybody knows, but the Public Safety Committee had Wendell Hughes, Bobby Hall, and they're the 2 Democrats. It's unfortunate this has come down to politics.
Well, it is.
But it is. And animal issues should not, but they do. And then we also had Francis Perrier and Calvin Castine. So 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans in the public safety meeting. They voted, and it was a 50-50 split. So then Calvin Castine says, I'll tell you what, because he's getting a ton of slack. We're out in the community and people are realizing that he and the other Republicans are fighting us hard on this. So he says, I will allow it to pass the Public Safety Committee, even though there's a split. This is a way to look good. So it's not on him.
Right.
So he says, the next meeting will allow a vote. And I looked at him and I said, no tricks. Because it had been nothing but tricks at that point.
Right.
I mean, look at the census law,
right,
or the census that we did.
Right.
It had been nothing but tricks. So we gather up a large group of people, supporters.
Yeah.
We go to this legislature meeting, and in fact, tricks. And we were so angry.
So they didn't do a vote?
They did not do a vote. We had a ton of people there. Again, which it's very hard to drag a lot of people out.
Believe me.
Yeah, it's very hard. So we get there, and again, he said no tricks. We get there, and he turns it over to the county attorney. And the county attorney says, there can't be a vote, which makes sense to me now, but at the time, I'm following what I'm told.
Correct.
And they say, you need a law, and you have to have the law drafted and approved by the attorney. There can't be a vote. So all these people were dragged out to a meeting for absolutely nothing. More tricks. It just really just gets on your nerves.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's almost like they just want you to just give up.
More time spent on wasted time here.
Right.
So I go and I draft the law. And see, when I was an Air Force recruiter, I actually wrote laws in the Air Force, regulations in the Air Force. So I have experience in writing. It's not like I'm just somebody without an education or experience.
That's why I say, like, this law was not something that you just, willy-nilly put together. Like, there was a lot of thought and there was a lot of comparison to existing laws. You conferred with people who were professionals in order to write this. So, but we do feel like this hasn't even been read.
Oh, no, it hasn't. So we get the law past the attorney. It took 2 drafts to get it past the county attorney. Stamp of approval. We're so excited. We're ready to have a public hearing. And we go to a regular meeting. It was the very next meeting. 3 days after the law got approved by the attorney, we're at the next regular session meeting. We do our normal speech at the beginning where the people can speak. We get up to leave. Me and my team get up to leave. And Wendell Hughes says, "Where are you going?" And I'm like, "We're leaving." "Oh no, there's a vote tonight." We had absolutely no idea that there was a vote.
Oh my God.
So we waited around until resolution 913 comes up. And that is our resolution. Had we had some idea this was going to happen, we would have gathered up a crowd. We had absolutely no idea. Nobody told us.
Oh my God.
So we were the legislature was down to 2 people that night. Legislator Kretzer and Bazzaio were absent. That meant we had 8 legislators in attendance. That's going to severely hurt our chances of getting a public hearing.
Right.
At this point, a resolution needs to be voted upon in order to get a public hearing. They took a vote, and Patty Waldron, she's the only female in the legislature, says, "Can we just postpone the vote until these other legislators return?" And no. I'm going to say it, I have no problem with Republicans. This just happens to be how it is.
Right.
The Republicans pushed the vote. Mark Henry said, and anybody can watch this video. He says,
I watched it, yeah.
He says, "No, we've postponed this long enough. We've been dealing with this for a year. We're just going to vote." So they took the vote on the resolution whether they would, in fact, postpone it. And we had Mark Henry voted no postponement, Rom Timmons, no postponement, Francis Perrier. Those 3 said that we needed to move forward without those other people there. And we had Calvin Castine, Wendell Hughes, Bobby Hall, Patty Waldron, and Kevin Randall wanted to wait. So we had 5 that wanted to wait and 3 that didn't. And so they forced the vote, and we needed 6 votes in order to postpone the public hearing vote, which we did not have because there was only 8 people in attendance.
Oh my Lord.
We're like, what just happened?
They shouldn't even be allowed to vote without full attendance. That shouldn't even be like a thing. What if there was only 2 people there? Like what? That shouldn't even be allowed. In order to vote, you have to have everybody there to vote on something.
Well, what killed me the most is you've got 3 who are against waiting and beat out 5. I mean,
yeah.
That's the rules of order, and that's how this works. But that's not
how it works.
Should be how it works. It shouldn't be how it works. And I know some of this sounds boring, but this is like our life on the line. A year's worth of work. We're waiting to find out what's going to happen, and we didn't even know about it.
Well, it might sound boring, but I think it's important because it's the things that people don't understand. So like you said, for those that didn't really catch that, is that there was 8 legislators there. And so you would think the popular vote would have won to postpone this until the other 2 legislators were there. And 5, in fact, said let's postpone, and 3 said no. And because there wasn't 6 people, they basically had to move forward. And so that makes no sense. And so a lot of the things that people take for granted is not real until you start going to these meetings and you start learning the processes. Right now it's about dogs, but the next thing could be about something you care about. And I've been there, and we've shared that story with each other privately. I've been there. And I can tell you that until it's something you care about, because this might not be something you care about. And that's part in the problem here, is that we have a tendency to only care about the things we care about. But this group, and the reason why we're doing this interview, and the reason why we're pushing people to attend on Wednesday, this coming week, Wednesday, is because we need to understand that until it's something you care about, you need other people to show up for you. You need people to go, okay, this might not be the thing that I'm losing sleep over, but how it's being treated and how that individual is being treated by our own local elected people is not right. And I want to at least show that when things are happening, people know about it, because I think they bank on this not being known. Like they want to make these decisions and not be called out for it, or these little nuances of things that doesn't make sense. A vote that's majority should win.
Right. Yeah, they definitely count on people not paying attention. And I've been trying to bring transparency to this because people need to know what's going on. And in fact, it has caused these legislators a lot of pain, just being out in public when a person comes up to them and says, I heard you're against this law. I've seen them change their attitude considerably from, I don't want the law, to a made up excuse that sounds better. Because it just looks better to their constituents who want a tether law.
Right. When they say, because you have heard, we want to give the power to the town. That's no different, folks, for those of you that really love this. Our current president saying, we want to give the power back to the states. A lot of things have happened in this country because of the illusion that you are doing the right thing by giving power to the states to make decisions when federal law could protect us from a lot of things that is blanketed. And then you have states that are very dangerous for some people to live in and other states that are not as dangerous. The same thing applies here, is now we have dogs that in some towns might be able to be tethered for days on end because of nuances in a law that's created, but in other towns, they're not. And then now the dog control officers or law enforcement have to read how many different towns are in our county, like a lot. So you're getting, the point is the county has the power to do the right thing, to make one blanket law. They have proof that a county neighboring us has done it for 8 years with success. We don't have people sitting in jail because they were tethering their animals. It is about education, and it is about learning that this law is not intended to harm people and throw them in prison. It's about educating people about what kind of life a dog deserves, that these are not wild animals, they're domesticated animals, and what that looks like for proper care. And most people, I feel like Essex County said it, most people listen. Most people maybe even appreciate it. And the people I know that are sometimes in these positions of leaving their dogs outside, sometimes are looking for somebody to come to their door to say, hey, do you need help? Does your dog need help? I would like to think that anyways, and I would like to think that given some education that they're just not allowed to do that. It's just common, you're just not allowed to do this when you own a dog. And so we're going to attach the law document to the description under the video on the YouTube channel, Decoded North, so you can take the time to read this, because we could sit here and pick it apart. But let me tell you, it is not, there's no trickery here. This is pretty basic. It is, you'll read through it and you'll go, yeah, we're not really sure what these legislators are worried about here. I've tried to think, I've grown up in the North Country my whole life. I've been around hunting dogs that have been kept outside, and I thought, well, that must get cold. And we hear, and I'm friends with a lot of these people that say, this is the type of environment these dogs are used to. They have what they need, and it's a justification of sorts of just a lifestyle or a culture of the North Country that I think that we've gotten comfortable with, or that they've gotten comfortable with. And I don't think that it would really impact them much if they read the law and they understood that we could have some negotiation about certain things. If there's concern, have a conversation. Come to Jennifer and be like, okay, we've read this, and with great consideration, this is the population of people we're concerned about. And then have a discussion about what that looks like. But we're just being told no. You're just being told no. Or, like you're saying, no looked really bad, so now we're going to say we're going to give it to the towns.
Exactly. We were denied after that. I just want to get back to after Resolution 913, and the vote was pushed. That's where they had the vote on whether we were allowed a public hearing. And there was, in fact, a 4-4 split. And again, had we had those other legislators in attendance, it could have been a very different thing. We needed 5 votes, and we got 4 and 4. What made it worse is that we had legislators literally sitting on that panel saying they had not even read the law. I spent 2 months on a law that they didn't even read. Rob Timmons told me, Jennifer, I'm never going to vote for this law. I will not vote for this law. Then he goes into another meeting later on and tells me if I can change Peru's vote, he will vote for the law. We go to a town meeting in Peru. We don't even get an answer, but he tells me via text that he is never going to vote for this law in 3 years. There's just no, number one, communication or concern for how people feel. And there's a lot of dog owners that are really fired up over this. And some people that don't even own dogs just say that's just not how you treat an animal. You just don't do it, you know?
And most people don't.
Right.
We're not
People
trying
don't.
to, So I want to focus on what's next.
Right.
Because the public hearing.
We were denied the public hearing, but we are working on town laws. Since we've started this, the town of AuSable did create their own law, and it's been registered with the state. The village of Champlain also created their own law. The town of Champlain is working on their law right now, and it's being put up at the next town meeting. The only reason that was postponed was because they were really hoping for a county-wide law, you know.
I would imagine it would save the towns a lot of work.
And a lot of money.
And also, the county sheriff has supported this.
Yes.
So the people that would actually be in the position to enforcing the law are saying absolutely. So that to me is like, okay, so this doesn't, the legislators, this doesn't affect your work life at all. And the people that it would affect are saying this would make it easier to do a county-wide. So for consistency, for understanding, and even for the residents. It's not fair. Like some people live on a line between certain counties here, or not counties, towns. Right. And so for one town to be, I'm not saying they would be much different, but even the nuances in each town, it's just not fair, and it puts a lot of work on the towns, and it's actually, for me, passing the buck off when you have absolutely the authority and the ability to do the right thing for the entire county.
Well, again, we have people that just cannot, like myself, who cannot stand to see a chained dog, and it just upsets them to drive by. Why should we have to be subject to that when it's something that could be enforced very easily? You know, in some towns, like Champlain, there might be one dog that's chained up on any given day.
Right.
And it just needs to be dealt with, the person educated, and that's the end of it. But instead, we need to witness this time after time. And you know, in fact, a couple years ago, a dog died in Champlain on a tether in the backyard. It froze to death. So, you know, the town supervisor in Champlain is a great guy. He's taking things seriously. And I wish that all town supervisors would.
Yeah.
What does upset me, and I do want to mention this, is if, based upon that census that we did, right? The town of Beekmantown and Chazy opted for a town law. This survey was taken back in April of last year. Neither town has, proceeded at all in creating their own town law.
Right.
I went to that Beekmantown town meeting, and I'm going to say it, they took a vote, and it was a full vote, and it was on record, and the town of Beekmantown said they wanted a town law. Sam Dyer, who is now their town supervisor, said that this county should be embarrassed for even considering such a law. And that did not sit right with me. And now Sam Dyer is the town supervisor, and he is not proceeding at all. I even emailed him a month ago and said, how's that law coming along? And he didn't even respond back to me. So their board, I know he's not a man alone, but the board voted and they want a town law, and he is not doing a thing about it. And he's been now 11 months, and it's been 11 months, and he has not moved forward 1 ounce. So there's a lot of people that are up for election this year, and we want people to really know what they're about, and that's part of it.
Because like I said, if you might not care about this, but what if there's something else, and you're treated the same exact way? And I think that the important part is, we're not sitting here throwing a fit because we're being told no. This is a conversation. And so it's the lack of conversation or the reasoning or the understanding. You're being dismissed. You're being completely dismissed or lied to. And that is unacceptable. And I think that we need to hold people accountable and do the right thing. If you cannot do the right thing or treat people like they matter, or, which is what I really like, and I'm about to get fired up, which is that we're going to villainize the women in our community who actually have a voice and say things and call them crazy behind closed doors, because that's inappropriate. Women that vocalize the needs of their community have been dismissed forever. And I dare say, if you were a man standing up there with an army of men behind you, would it look different? So men, show up on Wednesday, because men care about dogs too. And I'm not saying that that men get things done more than women. I'm just saying that it seems to me as if the legislators would care a little bit more if they had to answer to a man. Maybe they'd give them an explanation. Is there a reason why that you're not owed one? And not just you, but all of the people, thousands, 55,000 people in our county. They're owed an answer too. This is not just Jennifer Jewett looking for the answer that you can dismiss. And if you dismiss us on Wednesday, I promise you we will show up with more and more people every meeting until there's no oxygen left in that room for you to speak. So please, if you see this video, share it amongst your friends, share it amongst anyone who cares about animals, and I will be happy to send the emails of all these legislators to you. I will attach it to this YouTube video because it's going to take everybody to say, why are you not considering this law? And why do you think it is absolutely appropriate to ignore people and dismiss people in your community? Because that is a bigger concern to me.
What really bothers me is that it's not just about being humane. There are a lot of dangers that come with a chained dog. You know, you look at the psychological effects it has on an animal. A bored dog will become aggressive if left long enough. You know, it doesn't always happen, but it becomes a public safety threat to the community. That was one of the things that I talked to the town of Plattsburgh and the city of Plattsburgh about when I visited, the city council meeting, that in a close proximity, like you have in the city of Plattsburgh, a chained dog could be a severe public safety threat. Again, it's inhumane, but it's a public safety threat. On top of that, what comes with chained dogs? The possibility for dog fighting, which is very illegal, drug use and sale.
It's correlated, you're saying.
It's all comes together.
It's all tied, yeah.
It's national statistics. Where you find a chained dog, you're most likely going to find domestic abuse. Animal abuse and domestic abuse go hand in hand. I recently went on a long trip. I drove down to Florida, took a vacation. The entire way down, I went through areas with a tether law in place. You look at Florida, you do not see chained dogs everywhere. They have family-friendly communities where they don't want to have public safety threats everywhere. They want people to know they're not going to walk down the street and get mauled by a chained-up dog that got loose.
Right.
So for our community, this is a safety issue that public safety at the Clinton County Legislature is taking too lightly. They are not admitting that a chained dog is a public safety threat.
Right.
The mayor of Champlain broke her finger last year when a chained dog came after her while she was walking her golden retriever. She got wrapped in the leash and broke her finger. Well, that may sound like a small thing. I've been on the other end of that when a dog comes chasing after you, and it's a scary thing.
Yeah.
So people in our community should be able to feel safe walking down the street and not worry that a dog's going to come after them.
Right.
There is the misconception, though, that people think we want dogs running free.
That's not it.
That's not what a tether law is about.
Right.
It's about limiting the time on a tether.
Right.
That a dog has an appropriate collar and they're not being choked out. But that also it's not left in cold weather. We don't want dogs running free. This is also not a ban on keeping your dog outside.
Right.
You can also get a fence or a kennel.
Right.
We just don't want the chain 24/7, 365.
Right.
That's not any way for an animal to live.
That's why I'm really hoping people read through this, because educating people is huge. So the denial of a public hearing, the vote, am I getting this right? It was the first time that they had denied a public hearing?
Ever. In Clinton County.
So it's like insane to me that this is the thing, guys. This is the one thing ever in the history of Clinton County that they have voted no for a public hearing with no explanation. Are we missing something? They're not even reading it. They're not even discussing it. And in fact, they're not even discussing it, but they're also just now dismissing it. So Wednesday, 5 p.m., Government Building. What is Wednesday's date? The
6th.
26th. So February 26th, 5 p.m., Government Building. It is the DMV building, for those of you who don't know. For those of you who don't live around here but have a desire to write the legislators, I will provide that information for you at the end of this video with their emails and contact information so that you can make sure that your voice is heard. And again, is there anything else, lastly, that you want to add? I know that you've been at this for over a year, and it is just a lot of information that you want people to know. But if there was anything that you had to wrap up, like at the end here, what would it be?
First of all, if you see an animal in distress, please reach out and say something. You know, just don't walk by if a dog is on a chain and it looks like it could be in distress. Contact animal control, contact the sheriff's department. Just don't look the other way. That's, you know, that's important.
Yes.
Unfortunately, a lot of people will say you need to mind your own business. To me, when it comes to animals, that's not the answer.
No.
You know, we need to do something. Second of all, I would like to say that there's an election coming up this year, and I'd like people to know who they are voting for. Mm-hmm. You know, because maybe you think some of these laws are weak in Clinton County and that we need stricter animal cruelty laws. How do you get them? By electing people in the seats who have the ability to vote and create the laws. So we really, really need to see some change in Clinton County. We are so behind the times.
Right. Yeah. And again, I keep stressing it enough. I keep saying again, but I'm saying that what's upsetting to me more is that the behavior of the legislators, the behavior, the character, the lack of leadership and understanding that your constituents deserve a conversation. If you see one of your constituents that is passionate about something that is out of the good of their heart, okay, this is something to improve the lives of animals. So if you see that there is intent that is good, and you're a legislator, and you are voted in, and this is how you treat them, much less villainize them or call them crazy, or then start to, I dare say you're one of the people that would treat people in your life this way. And I don't like that. And I think that there's been plenty of people I've met in leadership in local community politics that have shown me otherwise. And you have met some of those people that have been champions of the cause. And I applaud you for standing up against your peers in this conversation. But it isn't about, for me, it is about the dogs now. But show up in the group. And the reason why we're all showing up is to hold people accountable that are in leadership positions to do the right thing. And that's what I want to end with, is I want to see people show up to hold people accountable and to back those of us in the community that are trying to do the right thing and get the right things done. Because right now it's dogs. With the way things are going, guys, next week it'd be something that you feel is super important, and you could be sitting right in that chair telling me something that matters to you, and you're going to need your community to show up for you, not your legislators, because sometimes they don't. And that's the moral of this story, right?
Right.
Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate this. I know that they think they're wearing you down. You're not. They're not. You're not. You're not wearing her down. And we're here for you. Right. So we'll keep up the fight until we get some stuff done. And I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes, of course.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Jen.
So we mentioned the husky at the beginning of this, which was the entire reason for my fight. This summer, unfortunately, that dog died on a very hot day, chained up in the same place that it lived its entire life. Unfortunately, that's the fate of a lot of dogs in the end. When the police department showed up, the dog had been buried up back. Nobody would have known any different. And the owner didn't, in fact, know if the dog had died on a Friday or a Saturday. The dog was gone. And I was very upset, and so were a lot of people.